This is Man-at-Arms, and you are listening to the Masters of Grayskull.
Thank you, Mr. Gary Chalk, as Man-at-Arms from the 2002 He-Man and the Masters Universe cartoon series, for giving us that promo. I'm, of course, TFG1Mike. Joining me is OptimusSolo. Hello, sir.
Hello.
We just want to put this at the beginning of every episode for Masters of Grayskull. We dedicate every single episode of this to the memory of Dean Steffen. Dean, who is the writer, story editor, all that kind of stuff on the 2002 He-Man series, passed away May 15th of 2018. And not only are we doing this because we're finishing our Powers of Grayskull series podcast, we're also, I feel at this point, doing this in the memory of him because the stories that he helped create and build for this series, it revitalized the Motu franchise, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's unfortunate that we didn't have a chance to ever talk to him for the show, but we can at least remember him as we move forward.
Absolutely. And now, on with the show.
I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous. By the power of Grayskull!
I have the power!
Hello, this is OptimusSolo, and welcome to the 119th chapter in our Powers of Grayskull series. With me for this journey into the Masters of the Universe franchise is TFG1Mike. Hello.
Get off my lawn.
He is an old crotchety man, and before we get ready to return to Eternia, sir, I feel like we should take care of some business. Mainly, I'll let you take the floor because you, for once, are the main reason why we have been MIA for a little while. So take it away, sir.
Well, it's been a year.
2020 has been a year?
No. It's been a year and a month since we recorded or whatever. What I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to release 119 and 120 Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, most likely to be the last two episodes of this year. Mm-hmm. And then whatever we record next, I'll release them whenever. But the thing of it is it's been, I remember this specifically, besides the fact I just looked at it a couple of days ago. We recorded episode 118, or at least we released episode 118 on your birthday last year. So It's been just over a year and a little extra change here since we recorded and released last. And lots of crap has happened, and this is probably the only podcast I have said this on to this point. When I met Karen, and everyone asked, "Oh, how'd you meet?" We met online. How does anybody meet anybody nowadays? We met online.
Catfisher.
Ha, funny. Yeah, we met at the local Rockford Pizza Hut or something. Anyway, we met online, and we felt it was right and whatever else, so we went and dated for a few months. We said, screw it, why are we going to put ourselves through this long, drawn-out engagement or whatever? So we got married. We went to Social Security and asked them, will anything change with my benefit? We did this before we actually got married. They said, no, it'll be fine. Report to them after the fact. Oh, well, she has a job, she has income, that means SSI, you can't have it anymore. And I'm like, okay. And then they kept sending me checks. It's direct deposit. They kept sending me the money, even though I told them we've reported everything we're supposed to report.
Mm-hmm.
And amongst all of this, her dream has always been to live on the Oregon coast. Well, I told her, I said, because of my cerebral palsy and disabilities and everything else. Oh, by the way, yeah, we did not. I didn't have brain surgery by the time we recorded that episode, did I? No, I don't remember. Anyway, May of 2019, I had brain surgery. Anyway, but it's one of those things where she's always wanted to live out here, but we both have medical needs now, so we're like, where's the best place? So we settled in Vancouver, Washington. Throughout that time, from November 2019 to pretty much November 2020, my computer was in storage back in Illinois. Because we didn't have a place out here yet to settle. We were finding the place when we got here, so we couldn't have we don't know anybody out here. I mean, I've got a couple of like random online friends, but like there's no actual base. But you got to follow your wife's dreams and happy wife, happy life, all that good stuff. Oh, by the way, she's no longer my wife because in September of last year, we had to get divorced in order for me to get Social Security back to keep getting paid. So yeah, folks, it's been a rough year, and it's not just because of 2020. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with COVID. Thankfully, we've tested negative every single time, but it's been a year, and it's been stressful. Like, and you keep telling me off air, you're like, I can record the shows. And I know you can. I'm not saying you can't. I just have this weird thing as if I don't do it, it's not going to get done the way I want it to get done, kind of a thing. And it's anal retentive. I know. Blame my parents. That's how they raised me. So yeah, we're back. Yay. COVID
so here's the deal, guys. If you want to sum that up in like a few short sentences, basically. All right. Since the November of last year when we recorded last, COVID happened. We've been on lockdown. People have been out of work. All that other pandemic stuff has happened. I have had a child.
Yes, you have.
And she is now, almost 5 months plus. About to be 5 months. Wait, no, she's about to be 5 months. Yeah, I'm getting it right.
Make sure you get it right.
And Mike is the reason we haven't been recording. So that's hilarious. Not the pandemic, not the birth of a child, but the ransom that his computer was being held under in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And now it's free, and now he's back, and now we're gonna do this episode, guys, and I'm gonna be the guy that tells him what he's right about and what he's wrong about and all this other jazz. And he's going to blame the rust on why he's wrong on our arguments. So let's just get that out of the way. Like whenever he says that,
no,
that's no. Anywho, we are finally getting ready to get back to Eternia. We left it off. We're kind of 2/3, a little bit over 2/3 of the way through the.
We're in the back half.
We're in the back half of Masters of the Universe, the last series that currently exists of the He-Man franchise, even though there's multiple iterations in the pipeline, so we've heard. So we're just coming back to finish all of those episodes, and then we'll do a whole wrap-up of this series. We'll do a whole wrap-up of everything we've done, and then we have some future plans that we'll get to later on. But we got to get these episodes covered because we will not leave any stone unturned. We will not leave an episode of He-Man not reviewed because that was our goal from day one. So I don't care if it takes 10 years. We're going to get this thing done.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to say before we travel back to Eternia, sir?
Well, at least we can say, if it does take another 10 years, at least we can say we're the longest running Masters of the Universe podcast ever.
Yeah, I think we got to at least record an episode a year, though, for that to count. So,
well, true.
So we just made it under the gun. No, we just missed it, actually. But all right, in this episode of Masters of Grayskull, we'll be giving our thoughts on the next 3 episodes of the series, which are episode 33 of Machines and Men, episode 34, Second Skin, and episode 35, The Power of Grayskull. So we hope you're ready, because it's time to go back to Eternia, finally.
Randor, King Torius has agreed to our terms and signed the agreement.
So soon? Your diplomatic skills put my own to shame, Marlena. Now hurry home. Your king misses you.
And your queen misses her king. Tell Adam I'm flying over the corridors of Lithos. When he was a child, we'd often come here with Cringer to explore the caves.
All right, first up today is episode 33 of Machines and Men. This air date, and we almost made this actually, the air date was around November 29th, 2003. So we're talking about 17 years ago and like a week. The writer was Michael Halperin, and the plot synopsis goes something like this. We're talking about an episode where Queen Marlena's aircraft loses power and crashes over the corridors of Lithos as power outages wreak havoc across the planet. And we come in touch with an alien being, or it appears to be an alien being who has something to do with that power outage. And he invites both Skeletor and He-Man to his area, to his lair, to his world, to help him with something. And that's as much as I'll get into it, because we'll talk about the rest as we go. But what were your initial thoughts of Machines and Men?
A wizard behind the curtain, huh? Too bad his name isn't Zagras.
Or Oz.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the obvious thing, but at least getting it back to He-Man.
Yeah.
I do love the action scenes in here. Such fluid animation on that. I think that's great.
For sure.
It's interesting how that this plot, everyone on the planet is affected by global energy crisis. I wonder, how that relates to nowadays. But, like, seriously, everybody, even, like Trapjaw and Triclops and, like, Mechanic and everything else, I'm like, wow, what a disease.
Yeah, I felt like this episode was like the tale of two episodes. So basically we have two different plots going on at the same time in my mind, or two different almost stories. And to me, they could have been almost two different episodes. We're talking about in one half where we have, what's the dude's name again? I keep forgetting. I don't remember what the guy's name is, but the headless being who turns into the Power Wizard of Oz guy. We have him.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but something stupid. But we have him and He-Man and Skeletor as they battle through with their battle armor that he gives them, and trying to restore power and energy to all of, I don't even think it's just to Eternia, but it's at least all to Eternia. Might be some other surrounding places too. But so that's one thing that's going on. And then the other thing that's going on is Queen Marlena, who is in the corridors of Lithos and trying to survive, get saved, get found, make it back to the palace. So those are like the two different stories going on. And I don't know about you, I would have much rather had the entire episode be about the Queen Marlena story, and following her and Battle Cat and King Randor trying to find her and all that stuff, versus what we got with Skeletor and He-Man.
Level 10 power outage in my lab.
Tell me about it.
We've got a couple problems of our own.
Whoa, talk about speaking out of both sides of your mouth.
Must be the power generators under the city.
No, that wouldn't affect Mechanic and Mannyface's powers.
Or Adam's sky sled, or my battle orbs.
Yeah, absolutely. Because here's the thing, Skeletor and He-Man, it's just, a Wizard of Oz plot kind of thing. Like, you have to help this guy because he's the power behind the entire planet, and Skeletor wants the power for himself.
I got a couple different things about that. Because the reason why I like the Queen Marlena story is because, number one, we don't get a lot of Queen Marlena or King Randor stories. So that would have given us a chance to kind of dive into that a little bit more. It does do some flashbacks to like a young Battle Cat in that area. And that's kind of how they find out where she's at, etc. So that's cool. Like, I'm fine with that. Whereas on the other side, where we have Skeletor and He-Man, not only are we dealing with this idea that always bugs me in these shows, because I don't mind episodes that reveal some of the mythology behind whatever series we're watching, like that add new parts of the history or inform us on something that happened in the world bigger than what we've seen, etc. When it's something like this, though, where it's like this apparently is how Eternia is powered, and it's never come up in 118 times 2 or 3 episodes that we've watched of all of these different He-Man series and She-Ra series, etc., etc. Like, it's never come up before, so that makes it seem fake and just like artificial, just created for this episode. And then the second part about that bugs me is that he's on this, I don't know if it's supposed to be a planet or a moon or whatever, station or whatever. He's on this place, and not only are there these massive machine warrior type beings that are not even beings, but just these machines, robots, I guess, that are trying to cause havoc. But number one, they don't really ever get into that. Like, we don't ever get to understand where those come from or how that is relevant to him. Like, how do they all coexist in this place? And number two, if he's the one that's in charge of powering all of Eternia, why are we allowing him just to be there on his own without any type of like army, without any type of security, without any type of guards, without any type of protection? Like, so that all seems weird to me. And then what we get is basically, and I hate when people claim this, so that's why this bugs me that it appears in this episode, because we always hear the same thing about 80s cartoons. You know, oh, it was just a 30-minute toy commercial. It's a 30-minute toy commercial. The only reason the series exists is because the toys, blah, 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 blah. First of all, side note, that does a disservice to the men and women that are behind these series, that are writing, that are directing, that are voice acting, that are doing all of the art that goes into making this series. It might have existed. Some of these series might have existed initially because they needed something to go along with the toys, but they're still a series. There's still people putting work in. There's still people creating stories and all this other stuff. So let's not say that. But then we get an episode like this that is literally blatantly an advertisement for Battle Armor Skeletor and Battle Armor He-Man.
Yep.
And that bugs me about that storyline. So I wish we could have just done away with that whole part of this episode and just done the Queen Marlena thing.
Yeah, and I agree. The only thing, honestly, the only reason why I'm giving this the grade that I'm going to give it is because this episode was, and I've noticed this in all the episodes that we've watched for this series, but this episode in particular, the music felt like it took center stage over everything else. I noticed more music cues in this one cartoon episode than I have in the previous 32 episodes that we've talked about within this part of the Powers of Grayskull series. And I really dug it. I thought it was great. I thought it was so good. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they had to, and I get it, people are writing this, people are directing this. Obviously, the voice actors are voicing the characters, and the character name was Sortek. I don't know who the voice actor is or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not looking at that, but I just tried to find the character name. It's Sortek.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Would have been better if they called him Zagras, but whatever. Well, wizards and warriors and behind the curtain. But yeah, I mean, in general, I just don't. This feels more like a one-off battle episode, and we just came off of whatever episode 32 was.
I was waiting for you to come up with that. That was going to be impressive. For the record, the voice actor is French Tickner. But yeah, and I'm not saying either. I don't disagree with you. I'm not going to give it a bad grade either. Like, overall, it's a decent episode. It just bugs me that they throw in this because it just gives like ammunition for people to use that, like, oh, see, here's just another toy commercial type thing. But there are some good parts about this. So I'll go through a couple things and I'll let you kind of piggyback
really quickly. We went from the price of deceit, which was that kind of third part of the Rise of the Snake Men 2-parter kind of thing. We went from that to of machines and men, or of men and machines, or transform this and G.I. Joe that and whatever.
She concluded her business early. Marlena was en route, flying over the corridors of Lithos when I lost all contact.
Mother. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'll find the crew.
Sent this for you, He-Man. Enter my battle armor, and it will bring you to me.
Right. It's weird because, you know, in the second half of this series, there's so many episodes that are like adding little bits and pieces to the overarching story between the Masters and the Snake Men and, you know, et cetera, all the other people that are going to come into play. And so we get a lot of that that's kind of progressing down this storyline, and then we have a few of these still thrown in here where it's, you know, kind of just like an episode of the week. It's just a, you know, whatever, enemy of the week or different things like that. And that kind of what this episode fits into, because it doesn't do a lot for the overarching story, but it still does some good things. So, for example, I did like that it showed. I thought it was a cool detail that it kind of shows how that energy affects different characters throughout Eternia, kind of how you mentioned already. So we get to see, like, you know, Prince Adam and Tila that are doing something, and, you know, their vehicle or their weapons or whatever they're using for the training stops working. You know, like you said, we get to see that with Mechanic. We get to see that with Manny-Face's Trapjaw, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I like kind of how they go throughout the world and show, like, it's not just a one thing, it's happening all over. It's a cool episode in the respect that it gives us an opportunity to see King Randor on Battlecat. Instead of He-Man. So He-Man basically has to do other things, and Randor is going to go save Marlena because He-Man's going to this world of energy. So he gives Randor Battlecat because there's no electric, you know, vehicles or powered vehicles that you can use. So it was either going to be a horse or Battlecat. So that was cool. And then, man, Marlena, she freaking stabs Tongue Lasher's tongue into the rock or the cave or whatever. Like, I don't know how much we've ever seen anything be stabbed in this show. That might be one of the only times, but it literally, he stabs the tongue. And then it's weird because the way they get out of that is what was it, Cobra Khan? Is that who's with is he the one that does the spitting of the acid? Spits acid on Tongue Lasher's tongue to get it off of the rock. Like, that had to hurt.
Well, she's basically using their abilities against them. I mean, you know,
but it's just crazy. Like, that's how he gets his tongue out, is he literally, like, uses acid to get it off. Like, that can't feel good on your tongue. His tongue just got stabbed, so it's already open and going to be bloody, and now it's got acid in it. Like, that's like getting a cut and putting your hand in, like, some type of peppers or something like that. And then we have Battlecat who skinned the snake. So that was kind of cool. We had the molting moment, I guess you could say. So I did like all of that. My only nitpicks, like I said, number one, I don't understand why this power guy is not being protected in some way. And then I also don't understand, this was Queen Marlena. She was going on a diplomatic journey.
So she was coming back from one, yes.
Yeah. Why is nobody escorting the freaking Queen of Eternia?
Yeah, I know, right?
Not only could they not just get some, like, random ass, like, guard or something like that, we couldn't send one of the Masters of the Universe. Like, this wasn't an opportunity to involve one character that we could have seen a little bit more on that was, like, her escort.
Queen Marlena, where is she?
Took my weapon. Went for help.
Battlecat, we must find her.
There were 2 guards, though.
Oh, there were 2 guards.
Yes, because they pick one of them up and they give him water and ask, you know, what happened or where's Marlena? And he's like, she took my whatever. So she did have a couple of guards, but, like,
there should have been a master with her.
Queen,
out on her own.
Absolutely.
So, what about you? Anything else that we didn't get to talk about that you liked or disliked about this episode?
I love, and it'll be in the audio somewhere within this episode, I love He-Man's anger.
Then I'll remove it. As long as I have the Ergon, Skeletor!
So when he appears again, after Skeletor basically blasts him out of the place, right before he says that, you know, there's another life at stake, when he says, Skeletor, like, I can feel, like, I could, in Cam Clark's vocal performance and in the animatic of the facial feature, I can feel his anger coming out of the screen at me, and I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah. And I wasn't making this up. This was a story that was written to promote the 2003 versions of the Battle Armor He-Man and Battle Armor Skeletor by Mattel Toy Lines. I had the original I had a version of the Battle Armor one in the 80s. I never got to see what the 2003 version necessarily looked like. I'm sure it's bigger and bulkier and stuff like that. But so that's the unfortunate part, that this story was written to promote that. But, you know, they got to make their money, so whatever. any power swords or havoc staffs for you, sir?
The only negative thing I had about this one was
It's over, He-Man. I leave with the Ergon. You get to leave with your life.
No. There is another life at stake here.
Cringer remembers, which means Battlecat remembers, which means they should figure out that, you know, oh no, they're going to figure out that Adam is He-Man and He-Man is Adam, because Marlena is like, wait a minute, how does Battlecat know this place? We only ever took Cringer here. Like,
oh, true.
Marlena's smart. She's a smart lady, and she should figure it out.
That's a good catch.
And I'm like, wait a minute here. I'll give a power sword to Marlena and to Cringer / Battlecat.
I had the same thing written down. I'm giving Marlena a power sword for stabbing Snake Guy in the tongue and Battlecat for skinning Snake Guy. So, I mean, those are two kind of badass moments by our heroes. So, I don't have any havoc staffs to give off to anybody on this one. Either. What about a rating for this episode, sir?
3.5. And the only reason why it gets...
I got my video camera on?
No.
All right. Am I screen sharing with you by accident?
I don't think so.
Okay. I got a 3.5 as well.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I really wanted to like this more, and 3.5 is not a bad rating. The only reason why it gets a 3.5 is because of how great that music was when it did swell during the certain points of it. But yeah, looking back on it and having us discuss it now, I'm like, it's not as good as I thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, if it was all the Marlena story, I could see it either staying at a 3.5 or, even being in the 4 range somewhere. If it would have just been Battle Armor He-Man, Battle Armor Skeletor, and the Wizard of Oz, like, I would probably be in a 2 somewhere, just because I didn't care for that half of it. But it is what it is. We're starting off on not too bad of a note. 3.5 is above average, so we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll see if it gets better or worse with episode 34, which is called Second Skin.
I got your Empress. Nobody's gonna lose.
Guard to Archer G4.
I can't believe I actually
lost.
But how? I captured your Empress. I had you surrounded.
Strategy, Orko. I saw what you intended and led you into a trap. You must learn to think several moves ahead and to always have a backup plan in case things go wrong.
Lord Dactus. Welcome, my friend. May I offer you...
There is no time for pleasantries, King Randor. I have something you must see at once. Last mid-moon, one of my patrols found this in Subternia.
Is that what I think it is?
Snakeskin.
I encountered a few snake men in the corridors of Lithos. I assume they were the last surviving members.
This skin has openings for 5 heads. King Hiss is alive.
The snake men? I thought they fell into the abyss. Hey, wait up!
Zodak cannot help you this time. He has entered a state of deep meditation and cannot be awakened. If King Hiss has returned, you and the Masters alone must stop him.
Can you at least help us find him?
I am still recovering from King Hiss's venom. My powers are too weak to sense his presence. I have only a faint premonition.
Up next today is episode 34, Second Skin, air date, December 6th, 2003. 17 years ago from the day we're recording this. Inside baseball there. This is written by Stephen Melching. Plot synopsis is: learning from Lord Dactus that King Hiss and his snake men are still alive, the Masters of the Universe track the snake men, attempting to retrieve the Serpent's Ring from the Sea of Rakash. So we're back to the snake men story and the overarching kind of plots that we're going towards the end of this series. So what did you feel like, how did it work for you when we're getting back to the snake men? Not that there wasn't snake men in the last one, but it really had nothing to do with their storyline. So Second Skin, what did you think?
This was a good episode, but honestly, I'm over. Like, I know this is going somewhere, and we only have 5 episodes left to figure it out, 5 cartoon episodes left to figure it out, because sadly, the series only got 39 episodes. It should have gotten a little more than that, I think. It should have got a whole 3rd season. But I'm already tired of King Hiss and the Snake Men.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I like them. They're cool. But, like, I wanted the story to hurry up and get where it's going. Like, it just...
I think there's enough of them that I like, because we had like Ratlore for a little while, and we had Cobra Khan for a little while, and then we get, this, that, and the other. It's been a little bit more King Hiss now lately, so I get that. I typically hate crossovers. Personally, like, I do not like when my fictional worlds coincide, because I feel like it's forced. I feel like it's artificial. If it were to make sense, that'd be different. But when it's just completely two unrelated franchises that are now crossing over, I hate that. But I cannot help watch the Snake Men, specifically King Hiss, and not think of Serpentor from G.I. Joe. Like, I just am like, these two guys got to be in the same family, right? Like, they'd hang out with each other, like, whatever. So, but it's weird because I actually watched these 2 episodes a year ago, or a year and some change ago, because I actually had notes already written down for these 2 episodes. I rewatched them today to make sure I remembered what my notes meant. Right. Because I didn't want to go off of a year-old note. Yeah. But this is one that I had written down back a year ago, and I'm guessing that this would make sense if I was in the frame of mind that had just watched the previous 10, 15, 5 episodes, however much it was. But my first note was, whoa, Orko is still in this series, huh?
Yeah.
And then I put afterwards, and Roboto even. So I'm guessing that Orko and Roboto had not been seen for a number of episodes, or at least not been important for a while, until all of a sudden this episode they kind of make a reappearance. So I like that we get them back in the fray, even if I have mixed opinions on Orko. But another thing that was cool was, and this would again be tied to episodes that we had previously done, in one of the last episodes we did a year ago, there was a situation where the sorceress had been infected by venom from the Snake Men. And that carries over now with continuity into this episode, because we can still see the lines in her face that kind of show that she's still poisoned or she's still infected, and her power is not what it once was. So I do like that they're continuing with that continuity. We see that in this episode. We see that every time the sorceress shows up in these episodes that we're talking about today. So I thought that was good. Another funny thing is that for some reason this story takes them underwater. So we get the masters who are all shielded up because they're underwater, so they need to be able to breathe and water and this, that, and the other type stuff. And then we also have the Snake Men who go into like water mode, which is kind of weird. I get some snakes can be in water, but it was weird that they all had like the same, like, oh, we got to do our gills now, and we got to do our flying parts, like we're flying squirrels and whatnot. But when they're underwater, Cobra Khan, I believe it's Cobra Khan, tries to spit. He's going to go to spit venom.
And he can't.
and whoever he's going against, I can't remember at the time, was like, you can't spit venom underwater. So I'm glad that they at least acknowledged that and called that out, that he couldn't do that. That was nice. Yeah. And then one other piece of continuity before I let you kind of bounce off some of these, but I do like that they continue to show that Rattler and Snakeface are in prison. And they haven't just ignored that, because a lot of times in animated series, you have somebody that gets captured or put in prison or whatever, and then magically they're not there the next episode and there's no explanation for it. So I like that they're keeping Rattler and Snakeface for the moment in prison. So those are some things that I liked. What about you?
Fragmented. A serpent ring and the Sea of Rakash. I do not know what it means. Perhaps the answer can be found in the ancient texts.
There's no time. We have to find King Hiss now. By the power of Grayskull!
Orko.
I think I'll stay here and take a look at those texts. Figure out a strategy.
Orko is actually trying his best not to screw up. Yay, Orko. Because he constantly is like, ooh, I gotta have a plan. I gotta plan ahead. I gotta think, 1,000 steps ahead kind of thing. And I like that. I think that's cool that Orko is, actively not trying to screw up. And I phrase it that way because, let's face it, Orko's one of the biggest screw ups in this franchise at times. King Hiss is alive. I wish Skeletor would have killed him already. And that's part of my problem. I understand that they're going this whole snake armor, snake this, snake that, and this whole mythology of, or whatever you want to call it, for this part of the story. But that's my problem, is that I'm missing Skeletor. And between this podcast and the next podcast, I think we only see Skeletor twice. The episode we just talked about, and episodes next week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said earlier, hurry up and get to the point. Like, they went through this whole thing of finding the serpent's ring or whatever the hell. And right. I'm like, yeah, you're talking about the toy stuff. My first note in Snake Mountain, snake armor, toy propaganda. At least Man at Arms had a good explanation for it.
Yeah,
like at least the story was written in a way where it isn't just like you said, oh, it's now here.
Right.
I've had this for months, and the way he explains it is that he, forensic filed the DNA out of the snakes,
mm-hmm.
out of the dead snakes or whatever.
Right. I do also like that they actually have consequences when their armor, when their underwater gear doesn't work right. Like Mechanic has to basically stretch his head until he gets above water so he can breathe, and then they have to rush Tila up there because her thing has been broken. So I like that they acknowledge that. I agree with you, bouncing off of something that you said, though. Obviously, in this episode, we have the MacGuffin, I guess you could call it, be the Serpent's Ring. And it seems like there's a trend here with our stories with the snake people. Like, I like it when they were trying to release or retrieve King Hiss. Like, they're trying to bring him back. So that's what the original snake episodes were about, were some of the minions trying to get him back. And then I like the other ones, when it has to deal with them trying to do stuff with the Masters or Grayskull or whatever. But I don't like this trend here that we were getting in recently, where it's all about these little artifacts that they have to collect. Like, I know that's commonplace in 80s cartoons, but we were doing so well with just regular parts of the story that it feels like we're stretching it out, and they have to collect this thing, and then they have to collect that thing, and then they got to put this, that, and the other together and turn it clockwise 16 times, and then it's going to unleash more power that they already didn't have. It just gets old. It gets complicated, and it gets too much. Like, I would rather not have these little artifacts that they have to gather. So,
yeah. And the other thing is the turning everyone into snake people story arc thing, or whatever you want to call it. I've seen this before. We've all seen this type of story before, but right. This specific story actually happened. This aired December 6, 2003, probably 2 or 3 years before this episode. There was an episode of Batman Beyond where there was this cult of cobras, and they wanted to turn people into snakes, and I'm like, where have I seen this before? And this did nothing to further show how evil King Hiss and the Snake Men are. Hell, King Hiss gets defeated like an 80s villain here. Oh, wait.
Yeah, he is. There was only one thing that I wrote down as far as moments that bugged me, besides, I guess I'm kind of piggybacking off you with the Serpent's Ring, even though I didn't write it down. But
yeah,
at the end, we get one of my least favorite things about the He-Man universe, franchise, etc., with the solution that He-Man is going to tear apart the whole frickin' whatever that was. What was it, like not a mountain, but he basically tears a mountain.
Yeah, but it's basically a mountain because they say nothing can destroy, nothing on the planet can destroy this. So he picks it up, rips it off, and throws it into the sun.
It's not just like a house. It's not just like anything else. He like literally lifts like half of the landscape and then chucks it into the sun, like into outer space. Like I get that he's the most powerful man on Eternia, etc. But can we not do that? Can he do something that's at least somewhat within the realm of believability? Because otherwise it just makes it, because doing something like that has two problems. Number one, it means that there's probably hundreds of other times in this series where he could have solved things much easier because he has that much power. Like he should be able to just put a jail cell over Snake Mountain. Like have Man-at-Arms create one. He can throw it from the castle. It'll land over Snake Mountain and our series is over. So you can't have him do stuff like that because it creates too many problems when he doesn't do stuff like that then to solve his problems. That's the main thing I don't like about it, but I don't know. I just don't like when he does stuff that's so huge and so big and so ridiculous. Like if it's a man-made structure and he's able to, like, I don't mind if it was like a Samson thing where he's able to lift something, but it literally is like taking every ounce of power out of him and he can like brace something. Like he can hold it for a second, but this guy is literally tearing something off of the landscape and throwing it into outer space. That to me is lame. Don't do that, please.
It's a little far-fetched.
Yeah. What about power swords or havoc staffs for you?
Havoc staff to King Hiss. I just don't see him as a credible threat. I don't. Like he's scary, sure. The snake men are scary, sure, and snakes are disgusting and whatever else. But I just don't.
Not a fan, I guess.
Not really. I've never.
He's not my favorite of the snake men. That's for sure.
I've never been a fan of his. Outside of Tongue Lasher, I've never really been a fan of the other snake men.
I like Rattler. I think Cobra Khan's fun to watch, even if he wouldn't be my favorite. But I like Rattler. I think what is it called? Snake Face or whatever has a cool power. Tongue Lasher is all right. Like there's some of them that Squeeze has a cool voice, so I kind of dig him. But King Hiss is probably my least favorite one of all of them. So
yeah,
I can kind of see that. I have a power sword for Orko and Roboto.
So do I. Yeah.
Yeah, they both kind of do right in this episode. Orko's thinking ahead. They're trying to, at the beginning, he's trying to learn how to play chess or whatever their version of chess is, and Roboto's trying to teach him how to look, 2 moves ahead, and that obviously plays a part into the actual story. But I do like that Orko was successful with stuff. Roboto helps out, so good for both of them. No havoc staffs for me. You can give one to King Hiss, and I won't fight you on it. What about a rating for this episode?
2.
Really? See, I'm actually higher on this one. I know it seems like we're talking bad about it, but like I like that we're back with the snakes. I like that we're back trying to go along with that story. I could have dealt with something besides the serpent's ring, but I thought everything was good enough as far as the action and different stuff like that, and it didn't seem like a toy commercial to me, so I was actually up to a 4 on this one. So I will differ with you slightly on this one. We'll see if we agree or disagree on our last episode today. So after the break, we're going to come back and talk about the Power of Grayskull.
Beware, a graver danger.
Eternia will be mine. No!
Just a dream, Cringer.
I fear it is more than that, Prince Adam. You must come to Grayskull at once.
All right, last up today is episode 35, The Power of Grayskull, air date of December 13th, 2003, written by Dean Steffen. And this goes a little bit like this. Adam has a dream in which he sees a warrior similar to He-Man fighting both the Snake Men and Hordak. The dream prompts him to journey to Castle Grayskull in order to seek answers to the many questions that have arisen from the dream from the sorceress. All right, a couple things here before I let you talk.
Idiotic! Pathetic! Fool! Skeletor! Hordak?
My forces are gathered. Everything is in place. It is time.
Time?
When I saved your life, I told you there would be a price.
Number one, I wish I could have slowed down that dream sequence and gone frame by frame to see everything he saw during that. Because it flashes a whole bunch of different things on there. If I had more time, I would have done that before the episode, but it'd be cool to kind of break down everything that he sees in that dream.
Go to my former sanctuary. Use your talents and the magic within to free me from this accursed dimension.
But anyways, this is definitely going not just to the ever ongoing story that we're following with the Snake Men and now with Hordak, and et cetera, et cetera. So we get that progression of the overarching story, but we also get a heavy dose of history when it comes to the mythos of Castle Grayskull and of King Grayskull. So what did you think about this episode?
No mortal has entered this chamber in an eon.
That's the guy in my dreams. Looks like He-Man, but different.
Your ancestor, King Grayskull.
There was a King Grayskull? So that means this castle
was once his, the very seat of his kingdom.
Not to go all Kenny Loggins on everybody, but my first note under general thoughts in all caps, this period is period it, period. Because this is it. This is the episode that I have been waiting for since the beginning of season 2, because this has so much story, so much action. Like, if they were to take a whole, I know they'll never do this, at the time that they were doing this, if they would have taken a whole other thing to basically tell more adventures with King Grayskull up until obviously what happens at the end of this episode, oh man, that would have been so good.
Yeah, I mean, this episode gives us a whole big, long look at what life was like on Eternia prior to He-Man and Randor, et cetera, et cetera. So a couple cool things that we get to see from that. Number one, we get to see the origin of Castle Grayskull. We get to see the origin of the Power Sword. Yep. We get to see King Grayskull and who his people were beforehand. So some of it's interesting because some of it are kind of like there's a correlation between the old version and the new version type thing. Yeah. So we obviously have King Grayskull back then. We have He-Man now. We have Queen Vina back then. We have the Sorceress now. Yep. We have what I'm going to refer to as Battle Hulk Lion. And we have Battle Cat now. But then I like that they didn't just do that with every single character, because then instead of Man-at-Arms, Tila, and the rest of the Masters like we have now, we actually have what does that become, like the Council of Elders or whatever?
Yeah.
We have a bunch of people that, were around that don't necessarily match up with the counterpart from current. So I like that they did some of them, but not all of them.
Well, here's the thing, and you mentioned this way back in episode 108 or 107 or 108 when we started this. Mm-hmm. Where did the Council of Elders come from? Who are they? What was their purpose before they were the Council of... This is your answer right here. Whomever those warriors were at the end of that battle when King Grayskull died and he passed his power on, that's how the council was formed.
Right. The only thing that I'm not sure if this causes some muckiness with is with the actual Power Sword. Because it does show that the power goes into the Power Sword and that's kind of how He-Man can get some of his power, etc. But I feel like that somehow causes a problem, and I'd have to really dig in more so. And I didn't do it prior to this episode, so somebody can probably call me out on this. But there was 2 swords. You know what I mean?
You're right. And because they say in the episode that he lost his sword in battle.
Right.
And then he had to go find it. The only thing that I would say, and I know this is just...
But then I'm also thinking of like She-Ra's sword.
That's what I was going to say was, I know I'm reaching here, but maybe it was the other sword for the other person.
Right. So I'm not sure if we have all of our continuities that are like lining up across all the different series that we've had with when it comes to the sword, the mythology of the sword, but I'm fine with it because it's the first time it's really kind of come into play in this series to that extent. It was we're relying on explanations from previous series when we're talking about this other stuff. So I'll let it slide. But yeah, we get to see Hordak. We get to see some of his minions, which we haven't seen before in this series. So that was excellent. We still get some continuity with the Venom and still plaguing the Sorceress. So we get that. Hordak comes across as a badass in this episode.
Oh, yes, he does.
Like, not only is it just cool that we see him, he's got a cool look. It's a little different than we're used to, but it's a cool updated look. I get it. He has like a freaky face that he does at one point that's almost made me jump back in my chair. And then he just straight up murdered one of his dudes.
Forgive me, Great Hordak, but perhaps now is not the time. The clash with the Snake Man has left our forces depleted. That is good counsel, Calyx. But I so hate bad news.
Yep.
Like, we don't get to see that a lot in the He-Man world, but he straight up murders Calyx.
Yeah. This is not, this is not 80s George the Sons of Hordak. This is not fumbling Hordak. Hordak that means business and Hordak that everyone should be afraid of. We got to see Montana. We get to see Grizzlor.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only two
Leech.
I can remember of.
Montana, Grizzlor, and Leech are the main three that I remember. The only thing that I dislike about this episode, a tiny bit, is basically He-Man. It's weird because He-Man has his dream, and he has to go to Castle Grayskull to talk to Sorceress.
Mm-hmm.
And then to get his answers, he has to go from the Castle Grayskull and talk to Sorceress to go talk to this Oracle. Then the Oracle sends him on this other mission to go find this other thing, which ends up just being him finding the Oracle again. But it's like, he already went one place, then he had to go two places, then he had to go three places. In the meantime, all this other stuff was happening that he was supposed to be helping out with. Like, so it's like the two timelines shouldn't match up there. Because it should take him a lot longer to do everything that he was doing compared to what else is going on in the world. So that's a slight problem. And then I don't know if I'm a huge fan of how they do the Oracle with like basically a different version of Orko.
The way I looked at it, and I thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, hey, it's Uncle Montauk or Montork or whatever the uncle's name was in the original 80s series. That's the only way that I kind of,
I just wish they would have done a little different voice maybe. Or something. I don't know. It's like literally Orko's voice. But yeah, overall, I just love this episode. Before we get some of your other thoughts, I'm going to throw out some trivia because there was a lot of trivia about this episode. The character of King Grayskull is based on an early prototype of He-Man for the 2002 line, designed by the Four Horsemen, which featured him with longer hair. The producers liked the character design so much that they decided to incorporate him into the series as King Grayskull instead of a version of He-Man. An action figure of King Grayskull was released as one of the first figures in the Masters of the Universe Classic line in 2008 as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, and was also available in a limited bronze statue variant. Two more variants followed, a redesigned version of the 2010 and a glow-in-the-dark spirit of King Grayskull in 2015. So I'm sure you can find all of those if you want to spend a whole bunch of money on eBay or something like that. An action figure of the Horde race, identified as Wizards in the end credits, was released by Matty Collector in 2016. We didn't talk about those, but they were present in the episode, so more toys that came out of that. In the script, the original plan was to actually see the battle between the Snake Men and Hordak's forces. However, for production reasons and probably time constraints, it was conveyed through a painting that Adam or He-Man is looking at instead. It's the first appearance of King Grayskull, Queen Vina, Grizzlor, Leech, Montana, Calyx, and the Oracle. And it's the first time the origin of Castle Grayskull is displayed, as well as the explanation for the abyss surrounding the castle. Thoughts on any of those things or other things you didn't get to talk about the episode yet?
I'm perfectly fine with them showing and then explaining, like showing the painting and, telling a story versus just see, like, here's the thing. What I've noticed in my measly 12 years as a podcaster, most of the cartoons that we talk about, we're analyzing and supposedly supposed to be criticizing moments that are character driven or whatever. You could say there's bad animation, New Adventures. You could say there, whatever it is. But, we usually have good or bad moments to talk about that are actual moments. We don't normally like. If this painting was an actual battle scene, am I going to spend an extra 20 minutes to? Oh, he shouldn't have stepped that way. No, I don't want to. Like, I'm not here to analyze an action sequence to the point of picking it apart. So, like, if I like it, great. If I don't like it, I'll say I don't like it. Mm-hmm. I think this in the action sequence was. We're gonna get to that next week, folks.
And then obviously, obviously in this episode, we see that King Grayskull actually has to fight Hordak, etc., to try to stop him from taking over Eternia and the castle, etc. He gives his life to do that. His life force goes into the sword. He is married. We didn't mention, but Queen Vina is his wife, so he's basically married to the sorceress's predecessor. And then obviously that's how the Council of Elders are created, and Hordak basically gets taken off into a trap. Trap dimension sort of idea. And then we get, basically the Queen Vina says, she's going to look over the castle until she can pass it on to somebody else to do. And then there's kind of some premonitions of the sword. Eventually we'll find it's a new owner that will be a hero to Eternia, etc. So that's kind of how all that goes down.
When my sword was lost in battle with the Snake Men, I had hoped it was a sign that a time of peace was upon us.
Sadly, my king, that time has not yet come. Even now, the forces of evil are clashing. One will emerge victorious. And then the true battle for Eternia will be upon us.
Though I yearn for nothing more than an Eternia free of bloodshed, if battle I must, then battle I will.
If I'm giving a power sword to anybody, it's going to be Grayskull, both the castle and the king.
Yeah,
because
here.
This is what this episode is about. It's Powers of Grayskull, and again, it helps us learn so much about those things that we've been watching for years. So I have to give them a power sword, and I didn't have any Havoc staffs. What about you?
Me, I didn't have any Havoc staffs either, and I'd give a power sword to the castle and the king himself. So yeah.
All right, I can predict your rating, but what is it?
5, hands down. It's easily the best. It's one of the very few best episodes out of the 39 that we get.
Right. I'm with you. I'm on a 5 on this one as well. Easy 5. I could have almost written it down after the first 5 minutes. I knew I was going to like this episode. So one thing I didn't like about our discussion, though, is that you brought up a name of an had actually forgotten that existed. I had forgotten that we had covered it. I had forgotten that we had watched it, and you uttered its name, and now it's in my head again. Bad enough that I had to watch them all.
Well,
now
you know what? Hey, I was about a half a second away from telling you at like episode whatever it was in the middle of that. I'm like, just go get Tim Silvers and you guys finish it off for this. I don't care about this anymore.
This week we had 3 episodes, and weirdly, it must be the fact that we took a year off, or maybe I just didn't want to scare them away so that we could actually finish on a 4 and a 2. But we agreed once again at the end with double 5s, so that's a bizarre thing. 2 out of 3 agreed episodes as far as our rankings go. But man, I don't know what else to say. We're back at it. We're going to finish this thing out. We promise we're not going to take another year break in between where we're at now and then the end of the 2002 series.
And here's the little secret, folks. Even though the 2002 series will end, and even though we will eventually at some point get to She-Ra, this show ain't over yet.
Yep. There's more to come.
There's more to come. That's right.
Whoa. Hordak defeated the Snake Man. I never... Wait. Hordak! Hordak was in my dream.
Perhaps the past and present, your dreams and destiny, are more intertwined than we know. We must discover how.
Because the world needs another movie podcast.
The Geekcast Radio Network presents for your listening pleasure the Cinema Geek.
Hosted by Amanda, Kevin, Matt, and Dan.
Each week we dive headfirst in the landscape of movies as we discuss movie news, play movie games,
go in-depth on reviews,
and even have a top 10 countdown or 2.
Also, don't miss our director retrospective series, where we review noted directors' movies film by film. Bottom line is, if you love movies and love podcasts, you need to to experience the Cinema Geeks.
You can find us on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, or GeekCastRadio.com.
Decian, the superhero webcomic. Decian's got superhero antics and sexy girls. For action, comedy, mayhem, and more, read it now at Decian.com. DASIEN.com.
Defeated. The true prize is now within my reach. The conquest of Eternia.
Do you like retro cartoons? Then Saturday Morning Rewind is the podcast for you. Join them each month as they talk about classic cartoons and interview legendary voice actors like Jim Cummings.
I am the terror that flaps in the night.
Corey Burton.
Sometimes toys can be so flighty.
Rob Paulson.
Sure, Brain, but how are we going to find chaps our size?
Nancy Cartwright and many more.
Eat my shorts.
So grab a bowl of Lucky Charms.
They're magically delicious.
Put on your hammer pants. Go to SaturdayMorningRewind.com. And be prepared to feel like a kid again. Once again, that's SaturdayMorningRewind.com. Saturday Morning Rewind was voted Best Podcast Ever by its host, Tim Nidell. So it's gotta be good.
I'm Thomas DJ, top professional.
I'm Scott McGregor, talented amateur.
And we'd like to invite you to join us for our journey through every adventure of The Avengers.
No, not that Avengers. You won't find any tights, magic hammers, or fancy shields here.
But you will find some supervillains and some hot women in tight leather, so there is that.
And champagne.
Oh, yeah, lots of champagne.
With Umbrella, Charm, and Bowler, that other Avengers podcast, covering the seminal spy series that lasted from 1961 to 1969 on an episode-by-episode basis.
Join us as we explore the television series that helped shape pop culture and made an icon out of Diana Rigg, Honor Blackman, and Patrick Dean.
With Umbrella, Charm, and Bowler.
That other Avengers podcast, coming straight towards you every month.
Only on the Two True Freaks podcast network.
And if I refuse?
Then I'll take back the life I have given you.
Yes! I will do as you wish!
Thank you for listening to us as we are the Masters of Grayskull. If you'd like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, there are several ways to do so. Visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on this and all of our other posts, not just for this show, but all the other content we've done in the last 12, 13 years, however the hell long it's been. Here are all the ways you can listen to us nowadays. Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, the home where our files exist, Spreaker. You can also use Stitcher and any other podcatching client you choose. I personally love listening to podcasts on Spotify. It's the most user-friendly out of all of them for me personally. Leave the show's feedback in iTunes. Please do this. I did check before the show. We do not have any new iTunes reviews. Well, we haven't had any new content in a year.
We're to blame for that.
We're back, maybe. You know what?
What? I said we are to blame for that. So now that we're doing content.
Yes. Follow us on Twitter. At Geekcast Radio is the network. At Power of Grayskull is the show. I am at TFG1Mike. What is your Twitter?
My Twitter is at OptimusSolo.
Become a fan on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Geekcast Radio Network. We hope you enjoyed the Grayskull goodness today. And don't forget to join us in our next adventure when we will take a look at the next 2 episodes of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which are Web of Evil and Rattle of the Snake Men. For now, I am TFG1Mike with
OptimusSolo.
By the power and for the honor of Grayskull, we have the power.
If only there were another way.
If there were, you would have found it. Never was there a heart as pure and good as yours, my husband.
I must act. You must help me.
If you choose this path, there is no turning back, and you may perish.
And if I do nothing, then all of Eternia shall perish.
Go then and find the Oracle of Zalacia. He alone can give you the knowledge you seek.
Then let it be done.